Hey everybody, happy Friday. The weekend is finally here, and as you know, we always like to kind of kick off the weekend with a little live stream. Today we're going to be making a bandit's fort. More specifically, we're going to carve one out of a tree, a hollowed out tree. I think that would be kind of a nice little bandit's fort that works out well. We could either make it look like this, or we can use a different style. I've got another one as well that I made. And this one is a little bit more stylized. You see it's got like a black border around it, but using the branches go out off of it, kind of giving it the sense of, kind of a nice sense of, I'm not sure how to describe it, some contrast there. So I'll really leave it up to you guys. I'm privy to the second one because I just like that style and I want to share it with you guys. And then, of course, we will likely do a whole stream on how to kind of make battle maps like these in general, but I'll let the viewers kind of decide whether you like option 1 or you like option 2. Okay, you can see the first one, and then you can see the second one. So whichever one you guys think is best. Like I said, I'm privy to the second one myself. Okay, we're gonna let people filter in here. Cool. I'm so glad that we got some people in here. Hey, how's everyone doing? If you like that first map that I made right here, I have this available on my profile. You can clone and edit that. That map link is in the chat. If you're watching on YouTube, it will be in the video description, okay? All right, let's jump in here. No one's really making any suggestions, so I'll just jump right in. Let's go with create a new map. We're going to use Fantasy Battlemaps, and I'm going to use a different aspect ratio than I normally use because I want to use this stylistic way of doing it. So I'm going to choose custom. I'm going to choose 9 by 16. I'm going to go create map. I'm going at 4K, but you can do it 2K or 3K. If your machine isn't that powerful, I recommend a lower editing resolution, of course. And let's go ahead and jump in here. All right, so first we're going to go over and choose the brush. We're going to choose color, background, black. I'm going to go to fill. This is going to be the black border that's going to go around it. From here, we'll turn the grid on so that I have and kind of look at it here. And here's my grid. I'm going to use that as my guide. I'm going to go to the shape tool. I'm going to choose a rectangle shape. Go to add, and we're going to go into the catalog. We're going to type in grass. So you have grass there, and then fill, and you're going to go, fill is going to be clipping mask. And you're going to want to snap to grid so that way the board goes on straight. There it is right there. Perfect. Okay, and then let's have some rounded edges. I think that might be interesting. So I'll round off the edges. And the way that I round off the edges is I delete off the corners here first. And then I'll go in with a circle brush and add. And then I can make these rounded off edges. You just break off a chunk at the corners. So now you have these kind of rounded edges with a nice board here. And really you'll determine, you might change the stroke depending on the texture you're going to use. I think what we should do is use a forest floor texture since the bandit's fort is inside of a fallen tree. So if we go into forest here, you'll see there's a whole bunch of textures. Let's choose one that doesn't have all these artifacts. We'll start with this forest floor first and make sure it's selected as foreground because we're using a clipping mask on that shape there. And we're just going to go foreground fill, and you'll notice that the grass stamp is a little too bright. That's fine. You just go in and you bring the brightness down, and it should match in with it. There we go. Now it looks like it kind of matches or belongs in. If there are any swamp or wetland textures, that would really depend on the style that you're using. Okay, let's take a look here. Let's take a step back. I don't really need the grid anymore. I was using it to make the board, so I can go ahead and just delete that. There we go. And what I'll do with this is I want to bring it all the way down to layer -5. And the reason why I'm putting it there is so that I won't put anything below it by accident. Everything should be on top of it. You build a map from the ground up. So the ground is the very bottom. And then once I've done that, I can even rename it and just call it ground. Rename. There you go. And then I'm just going to lock it. Now I won't accidentally select it because the board takes up the whole screen, doesn't it? Okay. So now that we've done that, we can go ahead and start putting down the first stamp. And the first stamp, which is going to be the centerpiece, and it's going to be the largest stamp. And the reason why you put down the largest stamp first is because, one, it's going to take up the most amount of room and give you less work. And two, you can also use it to set scale. Okay, so I'll look up let's go back to battle maps and just type in tree. And there should be a large tree right here, epic stamp. It's a little small. We'll have to scale it up really big. Just like that. Make it nice and big. And I'm going to have a road that kind of leads up to the fort or up to the camp. I think right about there looks good. And now there's enough space down here to create a little road. And then you might want to, I'm going to rotate it because I want to create an open space in which players can walk into before they go to the fort. So let's rotate it here. And by open space, I mean this. You might be confused what I'm talking about when I say, what's with the open spaces? I'll show you here. When I say like there's a negative space here, I mean this right here. See this nice open space right here? This is going to work out great. I can put stuff inside of this space right here. An entrance area, defenses, walkable stuff, whatever it might be. And these negative spaces are great spaces to put little things inside of. So maybe you want to put some ruins in right there. Or maybe you want to put like some tree branches that fell down over here. But right here is where that main entrance will be. And then we'll have a road that kind of winds down like that. Okay. And then these other open spaces can be used for combat before you go in. Whenever I'm putting down the layout for my battle map, I'm generally thinking about the battle part, right? So you have this open space right here where your players are going to try to move inward and try to get to the entrance. Now, depending on how your combat goes with your players, you might make the thieves aware or the bandits aware of the player's presence by an accident or something happens or they get spotted. Then this is where a lot of the combat will probably take place. If they're able to sneak in, then the combat will take place inside of the tree. Okay, so it's always good to always have a little bit of planning first when you're thinking about making a battle map. I always think about the battle itself. How will it proceed? What are areas in which players can interact with? What will the obstacles be? What will environmental obstacles be, as well as where enemies might come in for a combat? All of those things are super important. All right, so we've got the big branch down, and I've faced it in a way where there's an open space, like I mentioned, that negative space. And what I want to do next is I'll probably take the big tree and put it on layer -4 so that way it's just right on top of the ground floor. And I'll probably even make it a little bit darker. I kind of think it would look a little nicer being a little bit darker. There we go. Cool. And then I'm going to lock it into place so I won't accidentally select it. Now you're going to go over to the shape tool, and then you're going to select the pen. Or the free draw, sorry. This is the pen. This is the free draw. You're going to go in and you're going to choose a stamp that's going to represent the bark walls. And so in Fey, there is a nice stamp right here called bark wall. Let's use that. And I'm going to zoom in. And I'm just going to take my pen and I'm just going to, or my pencil brush here. I'm going to go in and I'm just going to kind of fill in where the walls are. And then you just press plus, and then there is your walls. And then I've also used a fill clipping mask on here as well. Now you might notice that when you use the free draw, you might get some issues with nodes right here. It's an easy thing to fix. What that is just too many nodes. So if you go in and just delete a couple of the nodes, you'll end up removing that effect. So you see how I'm kind of deleting those nodes, and then what that does is it fixes that problem. Perfect, right? Now what I want to do is I want to show a difference between the inside and the outside of the tree, and so it doesn't hurt to maybe use a texture that's going to be different from the texture outside of the tree. Again, we can use, let's try just using your basic kind of dirt texture right here. Advanced settings. We'll play with the scale, bring the scale down a little bit, and then I'll make it a little bit, make it fairly dark because it's inside of a tree. And then I'll just go ahead and fill it in like this. There we go. And this is just the base texture. We'll probably paint textures on top of it as we go. One thing you'll want to do is you're going to want to take the fill, go to the little advanced fill options, and you're going to want to bring the layer offset down. And the reason why you want to bring the layer offset down is because you don't want to place a stamp and then it goes below the floor. You want it to be on top of the floor, and yet you want it to also be below the wall stamp. So you have to bring the offset of the fill down And I'll bring it down to layer -4. That works out fine. And then as for the shape part, I'm going to go back in here and I'm going to do the same thing. The layer offset, I'm going to put that all the way up to about layer +5, the highest that it can get, or +4. And I'm putting it that high up because that way I can have stamps be underneath it. So now there's some distance, some room for me to place stamps, right? Okay, now that that's done, that looks good. Let's take a step back and just look at it. Just want to see the overall composition. It's always good to take a step back and look at things. Okay, now that we've put all that part together, we can now create access. Access is like, how do I get in and out of the structure? So I'll go into the catalog. I'm going to go ahead and use stairs. And we'll go ahead and use some stairs to go in. And I think I like this sailing shit because it has like the board over the head. And we'll go ahead and have it to where the stairs are going down. And you can tell that because of the shadow work. So if I look at this one and then I look at this one, you'll see that there's a difference between the two. The one that's lighter, it's going up. The one that's darker is going down. So I'll use this right here. And I'm going to turn snap to grid off. I don't need it right now. And then this is really going to help to set scale because the staircase should represent probably 5 by 5. I'll place it right there. And I'll bring the brightness down a little bit so it matches a little bit in with that, with the color. It's a little too bright. See how warm those colors are? If I bring the brightness down a little bit, it should match a little bit better. Okay, and then I'll also use a trap door to represent the other part. So I'll put a trap door right here. I'm going to scale it to be about the same size as that. And I'll put the trap door right here like this, or right here like this, whichever way you want to put it, whichever fits in the best. And remember when I mentioned the stamp being underneath the wall but on top of the floor? That's why I put some space in between those layers, or in between those stamps, all right? So I can put that there. It doesn't really matter which way you put it. Right here would kind of show that it's just a direct stair that goes underneath, or maybe the stair underneath kind of winds a little bit into a little bit of a tunnel. That's up to you. It doesn't really matter. I'll put it just like this. And then just like before, I'll bring the brightness down a little bit just so that it kind of matches in with the same brightness or darkness stamp behind it. There we go. Perfect. Okay. So now we have our access points. Great. Let's do that. I'm going to go ahead and lock this shape because it's big. And now I won't accidentally select it. These are kind of smaller. So I probably won't accidentally select them as much as the bigger stamps that I have. Okay, let's zoom in here. Let's talk about, now that we have access points, we know how to get in and out of the bandits' fort. What about defenses? How is it that the bandits are going to keep this fort of theirs defended? And you know what works great for natural defenses is thorns. And so we'll go ahead and take, let's see, thorn. There it is right here. We'll take these thorns and I'm going to place them. I'm going to place a whole bunch of them. Let's make sure that this is below. There we go. The thorn is below the actual fill mask that's in the inside of the tree. And that way, if I overlap, it won't go over it. So that's good. Good step. There we go. And I'm going to I'm going to go ahead and put a whole bunch of these all along here. And then underneath right here as well. And what this will represent is the defenses, right? If they try to climb up the tree, they'll get snagged in here. And let's also put them around here. Let's encase some of the entrance to give it more defenses. So we'll place a bunch of thorns all along here. That way we have some nice defenses. There we go. I'll even kind of branch out a little bit onto the tree here. Not that far in. Another one here. I think here should be good. And then one here should be good. Okay. Now I can go ahead and select every single one of these. Select all from this set. And I'm going to manipulate the shadows. I'll just vertically put the shadows this way. A little bit more intensity. A little bit more blur. And then this will make it look like they're kind of popping out a little bit, doesn't it? Now that you've added that shadow. Remember, one of the big tricks for creating depth is to use contrast, right? A dark shadow will cause a stamp to pop out because it's trying to contrast the light part, which is the stamp, against the dark part, which is the shadow. Contrast. Lightest light against the darkest dark. That's how you're going to create a lot of depth. So kind of a nice little trick there. Okay, now that we have that. So the defenses are set up. Let's put down some base textures on the outside. Let's go back to the forest. Let's see here. And let's go ahead and use the one that actually has forest floor with actual branches and stuff in it. Let's see here. Where are we at here? There we go. We can put some inside of here, some branches, put some inside of here and here. And then let's put some over here as well. There we go. Okay. Now let's go ahead and create maybe the little bit of the road that I was talking about. So we'll use this stone texture. And I'll bring the opacity down. About 30 is always good. And then I'm just going to fill in the negative space, which is this right here inside. Oopsie, those stones are a little bit big. Let's go ahead and do a texture scale. Boo-boo on my part. Happy little mistake. Okay. All right. And then just go in and just kind of fill in the negative space with some stone. And then we're also going to kind of highlight a little bit of a road that kind of goes over to here. There we go. So we now have a little bit of a road there. Kind of leads into it. Let's take a step back and look at it. Yeah, that looks good. This could be a little bit darker, I think. Cool. All right. So far, I'm happy with it. Okay. So now we got a road leading up to it. We're at 200 changes. Let's quickly save. And then we'll go ahead and move on to the next part. I'm going to call it Bandit's Fort or Bandit's Hideout. There we go. One moment. Let that save. All right. Looking good. Yeah, this is a great style. I love making these little boards. It's great because then when you have stamps kind of bleeding off of that little ground floor, it causes them to contrast and kind of pop out more, and I think it just looks more intriguing. And you can do that with any battle map that you're making. You just make the board that you add the fill, and then you can add anything that you want. A forest, the trees will kind of bleed off, trailing off of the board or the ground and then over the black, and that makes it look like there's depth to it. So there's a lot of cool things that you can do making it that way. Let's talk more about the defenses. We were talking about defenses. Let's continue with that. So let's make some like boardwalk that the bandits can walk on, get a high ground, and then defend the front of the entrance. Because right now you might have thorns there, but that can be navigated by your players, right? They can just walk around the thorns and then get right to the tree, right to the staircase there. So we should add some further defenses to make this more difficult for the players, right? So if you type in orc, it should take you right to the orc pack. And there's these nice rickety bridge. These will work out great. Let's just use these. I'll go ahead. I'm just going to create a little bit of a bridge right here. Oopsie, let's take it down a layer. There we go. That looks good. Just like there. Let's bring the scale down. There we go. So we have one little bridge there. And let's change the shadow as well. So it looks like that it's kind of hovering a little bit. There we go. That looks good. And we can put another one, copy and paste. Oopsie. The whole thing. That one, copy and paste. Another one right here, like that. In fact, that's a little too long. Let's do a shorter one. There we go. Shorter one like that. Okay. Now that I've added those defenses, how is it that the bandits or your players get to those spaces? That's not too complex. In fact, yeah, I think those two, we could even add another one over here if we really wanted to. We could do that. Yeah, let's add a third one. Let's put that right there. I think a third one, just to make it look more interesting. There we go. And then I think I'm going to I want thorns to be underneath of them, because that way when players try to climb up to get to those platforms, they can't because they get caught in those thorny vines. So it's very helpful to throw in those defenses. Now we need access to get to those defenses. Like, how is it that I get there? So we'll go back to the shape tool. We're going to use portals, and we're going to create some entrances for this. And what I want to do is probably unlock this so that I can select it. And then I can kind of create the entrances. What I'll do is I will also select this and turn off the caps. There we go. The caps just look weird that way. So we won't add those caps in there. And then I can go in and kind of manipulate that one. Let's put another one right here. Let's manipulate this one. There we go. Let's put another entrance right there. Okay. We kind of go out to there. There we go. Let's take a step back and look at it. Great. Perfect. That looks good. Now let's talk about more access, like the ladder. They have to be able to climb up to get to these spots, right? So we can put a ladder or stairs. I think a ladder makes a little bit more sense. And I'll just hide it and just underneath of it, and then you'll have a nice ladder right here. And because I've kind of got in the way of that door, I might want to move the door a little bit, so I will do that. I'll move the door entrance right here. Or you could have them walk all the way underneath and it's over here somewhere like this. It's up to you. You can really decide how you want to do it. I think over here actually it kind of looks okay. That looks good. We'll line it up to where the passage goes right here. Let's see here. I think that looks good. Okay. All right. Let's take a step back and look at it. All right. Our defenses are in place. Perfect. Great. And you have access to get to those points. Perfect. All right. Okay. Let's decorate the interior, and then we'll decorate the exterior. We'll start with the interior first. So we'll start with the basic stuff for a camp, right? And that is the campfire itself. And we'll have one that's got like cooking. So we'll bring the scale down. I'm taking my stance and placing them next to the 5x5 or the 5 square foot thing. So I can put this here. Let's put the campfire maybe in the center. It's not a bad place to put it. And then let's put some bedrolls. And the beds will be kind of, what I'll do is to create a focal point, I'll have all the beds be facing towards the campfire. And that will create an interesting kind of focal point. And we can do 3 for now, but you can add as many beds as you want. That's up to you. But I'll just have these for now. Okay, all kind of facing inward. All right. All right. Let's go ahead and use, let's go put a stone texture underneath of the campfire. Kind of makes sense. So you have a nice stone texture underneath of that. That looks good. Okay. All right. Let's go ahead and add a light source to the fire. As in a lot of streams, I always mention the playing around with layering light stamps. You can get some really nice effects. So we'll use this nice orange one at layer 4 to give us that nice, really red, kind of orangish glow that comes from the fire itself. And then overall, like the light that kind of emanates from it, we'll use a yellow stamp and they'll put that on +5 and then put it right up on top. And if it's too bright, you can just bring the opacity down. And now that we've established a light source in a closed-in space, it'll be easier to determine the shadows. So we'll get to that in a bit too as well. Good. You can also start from the beginning, by the way, Eyes of Artemis. You should be able to start from the beginning with the VOD or the stream, but it's just the shape tool. And when I have the bark facing the wrong way, I've noticed that. You notice that? I got my bark facing inward. I need to flip it. There we go. So now my bark is facing outward. And that's just kind of important. This part, that bark part, needs to be on the outside. Don't have it facing inward. Thank you, by the way. Thank you for pointing that out, Eyes of Artemis. Great eyes. Love it. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. That's awesome. All right. Okay, yeah, let's change the brightness a little bit. It's a little too bright. There we go. Okay, perfect. All right, I'm happy with that so far. Let's see here. Now that we've added that in, we can throw in some other important elements like maybe some firewood. Let's go with sticks. I think there should be a bundle of sticks in here. This will work perfect. Let's put the bundle of sticks over here. And then we can find an axe. Oopsie. An axe. Oh, and it should be in the core here. We'll put a little axe right there leaning up against there. And I always like to maybe add in some details like maybe a bandit has a different job class or something different. You can always throw in like water skins. Is always good. There's a bunch of cool stuff in the camp. Stuff in here. Little tiny mugs. Some equipment here. Let's add in some of these pots and pans. It is a cooking station, right? You see that there's a pot hanging over there. So throw in some cooking stuff there. And then, let's see here. Oh, yeah, let's throw in an open bedroll. And we can just put that up against the wall right here. And then other things you can put in there are, when you're thinking about combat, there has to be a positive. There has to be like a reward for beating the bad guys in this area, right? And so we should maybe put some chests in here. So we'll put some chests in here. And you can put one like over here by the entrance, or you can put one over here. Like this. Maybe you can put one right here. It doesn't really matter. You can put as many chests as you want. Maybe there's 3 bandits and they each have their own chests. So that's up to you. You can decide how you want to do it. So we got some chests in there. I'm going to bring the brightness down a little bit. They're a little too bright. There we go. I think overall that looks good so far. Let's go and throw in a little bit more. Let's throw in some cracked ground. I would think some of the dirt would be broken up because it's a hollowed out tree. So we'll use cracked ground. We'll bring the scale down because you'll notice that at 100%, the cracks are too big, right? And so it doesn't look right. So if I scale it down, then I can go in and just start painting in the cracked ground just along the edge of where the bark is. And that should create some transition between the walls of the tree and maybe the ground texture. So a little bit of broken up texture here. There we go. So I think that looks good. We'll throw that in. Okay. And then the last little stuff you can throw in as well are like, you can add in crates, barrels, anything like that. All of that stuff works. It's up to you. Let's go ahead and take a step back and look at it as a whole. So far, so good. Let's save it. And we'll take a step back from the interior and we'll go to the outside and we'll throw in some more environmental obstacles, things that your players can interact with. And think of this as kind of like a two-phase kind of combat or battle where your players will probably have to stealthily try to get in. If they fail the stealth, they'll fight out on the outside and then they'll have to move their way inward. I would generally put a bandit or two still within the tree and then a bandit or two outside of the tree. And in that way, you kind of have a balance out between combat both inside and outside. It's always kind of a nice little touch to throw in there. Okay, let's do the exterior. There are some hell trees in hell. Let me take a look. Here it is right here. Hell terrain burnt logs. They're kind of a reddish color, but if you take the hue and just kind of move it over a little bit to like 8, then it will kind of be the same kind of color as the brown wood here. And these are nice and big, and so this works great as like an obstacle. I could place it like right here on top or right here over the road so that players have to like walk or go around it because it's blocking the path, whatever it might be. Let's also make the object shadow. I usually like to have a little bit of shadow to every stamp, and I usually just have it be like a drop shadow, and then I can paint in shadows later. But you should always do light and shadow work towards the end. I mean, at least the shadow work towards the end. That way all your stamps are placed down, and then you can start painting or whatever way you do your shadows. There's a lot of different ways. But let's put this log right here to kind of block that path. We can kind of put some that are kind of maybe on this corner right here might be good. You can put one right here, or you can put it over here somewhere. It's up to you. If you don't feel there's any good place for it, don't place it at all. It's up to you. I do want some stamps kind of bleeding off, so I think this one on this corner right here going off over the black, it overlaps, and I think that looks good. We can also have this one right here. Let's see here. Ooh, that one looks good. I like that one. Okay. You can even have a way to get in this way if you want. You could say that there is another way besides that path. It could be this giant thing. This can go on top, and then you can go in from the top and go inward. But I think that would take away a little bit of the challenge, though players do like multiple options when there's multiple ways to get in and out of a place. Combat is so much more interesting when you throw in multiple choices instead of just one direct route. But for here, I think one direct route is fine. For now, let's continue throwing in these pieces. So we'll throw that down there. Let's also put down some texture in here that has some of the logs and stuff in it to kind of fill in those negative spaces that I've got right here. See all this negative space right here? Let's go ahead and fill that in with some artifacts. Let's take a step back and look at it. So far, so good. Yeah, that looks good. Okay. All right. Let's throw in some last bit of items. And I think these dead logs right here, these kind of dead stumps will work kind of well. We can maybe place a couple on here somewhere. Players can like interact with it. Okay, let's put it right there. That looks good. The color looks a little off. Let's change the hue. That looks good. Okay, and then I'm going to put it down a layer. There we go. I think that looks good right there like that. And then we'll put another one maybe right here. Let's see here. I'm trying to find the best place to put it to where the map is balanced out. We'll take a step back. Stump there. Stump there. Here. It's all about, for me, I'm just trying to find a balance. Let's see here. I think right here is okay. There we go. I just don't want it to be too close to the other one. Let's maybe move that one over to here like this. There we go. Okay. I think overall that looks good. All right. Okay. Sorry I misunderstood your question there, Eyes of Artemis. I totally misread that. Okay. All right. Let's see here. I think I think this is looking pretty good. Where are we at for time? 30 minutes? Oh, we can throw in more details. Let's throw in maybe some weapons. When we have all this time, we might as well throw just a couple more details down before we get to the painting and the filters. Let's put maybe a crossbow up here. This is kind of a nice little thing that a character can kind of get, one of your players can get. And it makes sense to have a crossbow up there because bandits can then shoot arrows or whatever from that position. That's the point of that high ground, is to give yourself both better viewpoint and so better view advantage, and then obviously a height advantage when it comes to throwing weapons, spells, and things like that. Nice to have that. So we'll throw that weapon there, and I'll throw in maybe a couple other weapons. I think I saw some daggers right here. This is perfect. Let's throw some daggers over here. I'll put 3 of them kind of just lying on the ground right here next to that guy. That looks great. Cool. All right. And then let's go throw down some last green stuff. Oh, let's add a little bit of color. Right now we have a lot of browns and greens. So let's break it up and add some color. We got blue. We got, oh, you know what? Purple is a great color. Let's maybe throw in some purple. And then maybe we can maybe throw some purple on the vines just to give it kind of a nice feel to it. There we go. Let's throw some purple. I think it just kind of lacks color. There's a lot of browns. There's a lot of greens. So it kind of lacks color. So I'll go ahead and just place a bunch of them, and we'll get some color in here. And you can change these to any color you want. They could be white. They could be dead flowers, whatever it might be. But I think it's just kind of just giving it a nice feel to it. There we go. So now we got some more color in here. Nice. Perfect. And then let's throw in, the final thing is, let's maybe throw in some forest shrubbery, like these bushes here. They have flowers already. That's great. Let's go put some along the edge here. Maybe one over here, one right here, one in this corner. And then let's scale them down and get some smaller ones. Variation is super important. Scale them down. Create different sizes. All the same size is very bland. It doesn't look very realistic. So scaling them up and down different sizes is super important. And because that's such a bright green and it pops out in comparison to the green underneath, I don't want it to all be concentrated at the bottom. So I'll put a couple at the top as well to balance out those lighter greens. There we go, right there. One here, and then one right here I think should be good. Here. Here, let's bring that scale up. There we go. Okay. Looks good. All right, let's take a step back and look at it. Awesome. Yeah, I'm happy with that. Okay. So now that we've kind of established the light sources and everything, we can now start painting down some shadows. And sometimes I'll use a top layer. Sometimes I'll use the shape tool. Sometimes I'll use the line tool. It's really up to you on how you want to use it. And it really depends on if you use filters or not. If you're going to use filters, especially color filters, you're probably going to have to play around a little bit more with that. But without filters for now, we'll just go ahead and do this. I'll go with color. I'm going to choose black color, and then I'm going to go top, and then I'm going to bring the opacity down. When you're painting your shadows, I generally try to paint them on with a nice stroke, and I'm going to establish where a light source is outside as well, because I've already got a light source inside. What I don't have is a light source outside. So we should establish where a light source is. I think right here where the light is just might be over here, or right here might be a good place to put the light. So I'll go ahead and take the light source, put it on top, put it right there. Perfect. There we go. And now I have established where the light source is, and now I can start painting in my shadows. I'll also bring the opacity down a little bit. There we go. Okay. Now I've got that shadow. I'm going to start painting in my shadows. I'll start the closest to the light source, and I'll go up a little bit. Let's go with maybe, let's go up to 35, maybe a little bit higher up so I can see it better. And I'll start here, and I'll go ahead and just paint in my shadows, just like this. Okay, so we got the nice shadows here. Let's put some shadows in right here, because you would expect that, because you've got some high thorns right here. So let's put those shadows in there. There we go. And right underneath here as well. There we go. Put a little lights, put a little shadow in right here. Okay. In here as well, we'll put a whole bunch of shadow on this side because the tree is right here. I'll take a step back, and you'll start to see what adding shadows starts to do, right? It starts to add depth to it. So I'll go ahead and put them at the base, right where the tree meets the ground is a good place to paint shadows so that those branches look like they pop out, and put some space in there. Let's go ahead and put that there. Here we go. That looks good. Let's see here. Let's put one right here as well. Right where that light source is, remember? Facing away from the light source. There we go. And we're here a little bit in the inside of it. Here. There we go. All in here as well. There's a lot of shadow in here from where the light source is. So we'll just fill this all in with a nice dark shadow here. There we go. Okay. And we'll just go on the outside of it. All right. So you can see a lot of cool little painting you can do with the shadows. Okay, let's go ahead and put that in there. There we go. We're getting there. We're almost done with painting. Getting close. Just putting in these last bit of shadows here, just to make sure that that really looks like it pops out. There we go. Looks good. All right, a little bit more shadow here, along here. Maybe even here a little bit, but might be okay. There we go. Okay. All right. Let's take a step back and look at it. All right, so you can see the shadow work there. Let's save it, and then we'll add in some filters, and then we'll probably call it good. And I'll show you what I mean by the top layer and shadows. What exactly that you need to do. Because sometimes it's better to use like a shape or the line tool, because that way it's not on the very top layer. I do know that we have some fun things in the works where we'll have a little more control of layers, but for now with the current layer system, top layer, or you can use the object or shape tool, black fill, and then you can simply add a blur to it, and then you can change the opacity, and then you can change the layer of it as well. I'm not going to do that here because that's just a little bit more time consuming. And so just kind of painting is a little bit more faster for me, but whichever method that you want to do is up to you. Now I've done that, let's go to filters. So a good filter to add is always like clarity. I'll turn it off so you can see what it looks like. Clarity really brings out the other color, right? So that works out well. And you know, there's still a little bit of shadow work left. I forgot the inside of the tree. So let me quickly do that. So top layer here. So the light source is already established. So I can just go in and just paint the shadows like that, right? Because the light source has been established, I can now paint in my shadows. Nice. Same thing here. Put a little shadow here. Same thing here. Shadow. A little bit of shadow here. Same thing here. A little bit of shadow here. And I'm going to add a little bit more shadow along the wall here, just so that I can add a little bit more depth. So it looks like there's a little bit more depth here. There we go. Looks good. And then right here, I noticed I painted, so I'll erase. Just got to go off right here, fix that spot that I went over. There you go. And so now you have those extra shadows in there. And then we'll also add a couple more shadows to the items that are closest to the fire. And now if you don't want to paint, you don't have to. You can use object shadows. These are kind of small, so painting the shadow doesn't make a lot of sense. So just use the object shadow to do it instead. 0, 0. And we'll bring the intensity up. And then I can go ahead and just change the offsets to have the shadow. And because it is closest to the fire, we'll do a harder shadow. There we go, a nice hard shadow right next to the light source, so a nice hard shadow. And we'll do the same thing here. We'll make a nice hard shadow, and we'll rotate it away from the fire. There we go. And so now you have some nice hard shadows there. Okay. Let's go ahead and add in one more texture, which is kind of a staple for me. I really like to use dry grass to kind of represent movement, like trodden area. And so dry grass works great. So I'll bring the saturation. Let's change the scale. Okay, and let me just apply a little bit to the ground and just kind of see what it looks like, just to see if I have it right. Let's go to 100% and see where it's at there. Oh, FG, my bad. Yeah, that looks fine. And I'll just take this dry grass. And this works great to represent kind of a trodden like ground. I like to use that. I think it's a little too bright. We can bring the brightness down just a little bit. Let's go down a little bit more. There we go. There we go. That's better. There we go. Okay. Now we got some nice trodden ground in there. Perfect. Okay. Now let's go ahead and add the last bit of filters, because I think we've pretty much done most of the work there. So some things we can add are, we can do color filters, but you'll notice I can put in like red sky. We can really get those reds to pop out more. Because I'm using so much brown and earth tone colors, red sky is a great filter to kind of bring out those reddish earth tones. So adding a red filter is fine. Just note that the shadows themselves will not turn reddish because I used the top layer, but it's okay because I can't really tell the difference. So it's kind of okay, but red sky is great for your more forest, more wooded like areas because of it brings out those earth tone colors. So great for maps like that to use red sky. Another thing that you can do is you can go into color adjustments, and if you want, you can really kind of pop the color out more by popping the saturation. You can bring the contrast in if you want to get more of the stuff to pop out, or bring the contrast down if you want to fade it out more. Maybe you want it to look more like a coloring book, or make it look like it's more faded, like a drawing or whatever. All the different ways that you can kind of go about doing it. I'm just going to boost the contrast up just a little bit. And whenever I boost the contrast up, I generally have to bring the brightness up, because what the contrast does is it makes the lights and the darks contrast really, really hard, and then it gets too dark. And so if you are going to boost the contrast up, a little trick is to boost the brightness up a little bit too, so that you won't make it too dark. So always a nice trick when you're bumping the contrast, bump the brightness as well, so that way you won't run across that problem. Okay, let's bring the contrast down to 110. Brightness at 130 is fine. And then what I do in my final run is I'll generally start at the bottom where my players are going to walk around, and I'll move around the board. What I'll do is I'll turn all off so I won't select anything, and I'll start at where my players are going to begin, and I'll walk around the board, looking around to make sure that I have a continuity to it. So you walk over here. In fact, I can go ahead and take a path here so you can kind of see where I'm walking here. And then we're going to call it good. Let's go with the line. Let's add in a color. We'll turn that shadow off. Let me just see what that looks like. Bring the size up. There we go. So your players will probably start right here, and they're going to make their rounds trying to get past this obstacle. If they've made their presence known, then the combat will likely take place here as the enemies will push outward into here. Obviously, they're going to want to push forward to keep the players from getting inside. And so most of the combat, if your players are successful with stealth, will not take place in here. It will take place inside here. So if they're successful in getting stealth, or they beat them outside, you go inside, right? You take the stair here, and then obviously if you're using a VTT, you'll have a portal over to this spot right here. They'll come inside. Combat can take place here. Maybe they run off up here to grab a weapon. You can fight them up here into these areas. And so there's a lot of places that people can go and they can get into combat. What's also nice about those thorns is that those work great in combat, right? Like you can push an enemy off of one of those boardwalks into the thorns, and that makes them extremely vulnerable. Now they're stuck and they can attack, but just know that your players can suffer that same problem. But it's also nice to use, right? Maybe you're on the ground and you push an enemy against the thorn bush and they get caught, right? So using the environment around you is great. So just whenever you're thinking about the last parts, just go walk around the map as if you were one of your players and explore the map and make sure that you have everything kind of makes sense, right? You're walking over to the path here. You've made sure that there's enough space for players to walk through to get through here. You walk in, you make sure there's space inside for players to walk around. They're going to walk on top of the boardwalk here. All of those things are super important. Okay, well, I think that is it. Pretty easy to put together, not complex. I hope you kind of enjoyed the whole overall process, and I had a lot of fun doing this. I think the next stream next week is on Wednesday, and it is Family Trees. It should be a masterclass. So, and I'll also make this map clonable. If people like this map, I'll make it clonable and people can use it, and I'll put it on my profile, or you can just make your own. But yeah, I think it turned out great. Thank you, by the way, Musical Road. Appreciate that. I'll see you all next week on Wednesday for the masterclass Family Trees. You know, it's always nice to have a little bit of genealogy in your world so you know where your families kind of get their heritage, right? All right, you guys are awesome. Have a wonderful weekend, and I will see you all next week. Please stay safe and healthy and merry map making. Goodbye, everybody. Take care.